All right, we're going to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Council members present are Marmy, Floyd, Bug, Haas, and Hall. First item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $4,250.
This is a standard payout for a termination of employee compensated absence.
Motion. I have a motion by Bob, second by Floyd. I hope the committee pays attention. I'll wait first. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $11,482.48.
This appropriation is for the police department's JAG grant, and we will be reimbursed 100%.
Motion. Motion by Bub, second by Floyd. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say go Bucks. Go Bucks. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
What's the opposed?
The same thing. We're all go Bucks.
Right here, it sounds like you're saying go Ducks.
You're never going to make it.
Anybody a motion for our auditor's hearing aids? Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to apply for financial support from the state of Ohio 2015 Recreational Trails Program.
This is a grant that we are going to apply for through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. We are looking at considering purchasing 2 vehicles. Idea will be discussed on January 21st, and then the Recreational Advisory Committee will have a meeting to discuss the uses of those vehicles on the bike trail.
Second by Floyd, second by Bub. Questions or discussion?
I'll just read it.
Seeing none, all those in favor say go Bucks. All opposed?
I heard it that time.
Motion passes 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a request for appropriation in the amount of $494,955.71.
This is just a kind of housekeeping issue with some of our bond projects. You notice this is Fund 672, which is a Mouse Rate project. We're transferring money back over to our sewer projects, which is the 665 fund. Housekeeping of where we spent this money in the end, trying to help the auditor get straighten out where we're spending money. So this really isn't spend money, it's just put in the proper fund.
Motion. Motion by Bub, second by Floyd. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying go Bucks. Go Bucks. All opposed? That motion passes 5-0. And with that, this Finance Committee meeting stands adjourned. Next up is service.
We'll bring the Service Committee meeting to order. Members present are Cost, Roletta, Buck, Rath, Floyd. Our first ordinance is number 15-01, extending the authority of the temporary Board of Zoning District Revision.
Thank you. I'll speak to that. When the zoning code was changed back in 2009, there was a temporary Board of Zoning District Revision was set up. This is to review those cases that to restore something that the old code took away, or that the new code took away from the old code. And we have extended this board's duties, I think, 2 times. And the feeling of the administration and the chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals is that we should extend it for a period of 2 more years, and that's what this ordinance would do. If there's any other questions, I'll try to answer them.
Make a motion. Second. Second by Mr. Rath. Are there any questions from the members of the committee? Any questions from members of the audience? All in favor of sending this on to full council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. The second resolution is number 15-02, an ODOT resolution to construct a pedestrian bridge over Long Pond Run and various sidewalk improvements at various locations.
Yes, this is a piece of legislation that comes from ODOT. It's their standard preliminary legislation that basically states the city is willing to cooperate with them throughout the project development process. And the project is for our Safe Routes to School grant that we have been awarded. And the 2 locations of these projects will be, number 1, there'll be construction of a pedestrian bridge over the Log Pond Run diversion channel in the area of Legend and Liberty schools off Evans Boulevard. That'll connect the bike path on the east side of the diversion channel to the sidewalk bike path on the west side of Evans Boulevard. And then the other location is installation of sidewalks on both the north and south side of West Church Street from North 21st Street back to Greenway Drive. And along with that, we have been planning to use some additional stormwater and license plate permissive tax money to make some roadway improvements there, do some drainage improvements, and add curb and gutter to that section to clean that up. So those are the 2 projects involved with the Safe Routes to School project. Construction is planned for 2016 for both of those, and this is the preliminary legislation to show our cooperation with ODOT.
Second. Any questions out of the members of the committee? Any questions out of other members of council or the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Moran.
I'll speak to all of these. So.
Ordinance number 15-03, assuming maintenance responsibility for the full width of Licking Springs Road from the existing City of Newark corporate boundaries as shown on the map attached as Exhibit A, except for a 24-inch culvert located adjacent to 8022 Licking Springs Road upon annexation of 47.211 acres, more or less, located in Newton Township, the City of Newark, agreeing to cooperate in the maintenance of said roadways and identifying the Township of Newton and Licking County and declaring an emergency.
What more can I say?
I don't know how much more can be said.
Actually, there's an annexation pending at that property on the south side of Licking Springs Road, and I think you have a copy of the map that's part of the legislation. And throughout the hearing process with the commissioners, the county engineers requested that we do what's known as a highway responsibility ordinance, which is what this is, which lays out the responsibilities of the county highway department and the city's maintenance crews in regards to the section of roadway that is will not be totally annexed into the city. There will be 2 split portions of roadway there. It'll be partially in the city, partially in the township. And so the gist of the legislation is that the city will take over responsibility of such things as paving, striping, berm work, ditching, mowing, snow plowing for the full width of that roadway section. And there's a 24-inch culvert that's under there that was just replaced by the county because it drains the land from the county north of there. The county will maintain responsibility of that until such time that land annexes into the city. Then, of course, we would take it over. So this delineates all that, and hopefully gives you a blessing.
I assume the expedition is some sort of deadline.
Yes, there is a deadline for that. I was going to speak on that. The commissioners meet and would like to have this in effect by January 27th. I'm reading the law director's memo here. So if we pass this on to council, it could be considered at council on the reading on January 20th, and it were passed on January 20th, then would meet the commissioner's deadline of January 27th.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Bug. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Brown. Are there any questions on the members of the committee? Mr. Brown?
Can I ask a question of the law director? Would we be able to accomplish the county's wishes and still just waive the second reading?
No, because if you waive the second reading, you could vote on it on the 20th, but it wouldn't take effect for 30 days. The subject, technically, the referendum process wouldn't take effect until February 20th, and that would be past the county's scheduled hearing date.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the audience? All those in favor of sending this on to full council signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Consider resolution 15-4, an ODOT resolution for the construction of new interchange over State Route 16 to replace the current at-grade intersection with Cherry Valley Road. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. There are two pieces of legislation, this one and the next one, both dealing with Cherry Valley Road and both coming from ODOT. Is 1504 the piece that says preliminary legislation at the top? Okay. So that is the standard ODOT preliminary legislation, very much like the one we voted on 1502 previously for the safe routes to school. It's basically acknowledging the city's cooperation with ODOT for the development and construction of the new interchange at Cherry Valley Road and State Route 16.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Brown. Second by Mr. Bub. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Resolution 15-05, an ODOT resolution to construct a new interchange of State Route 16 and Cherry Valley connector. Very similar.
Very similar subject matter. The only difference in the legislation is this is a standard piece of legislation that ODOT has cities and villages pass whenever there are changes to the city roadway network, and in this case there would be some changes to Cherry Valley Road due to the interchange project. We'll be doing work on Cherry Valley Road. There will be a new north-south access road, roadway that would be built over top of State Route 16, along with the on and off ramps, and there will also be a multi-use pathway connecting the ends of the Tom Shavis Trail in Newark and Spring. So it's very similar. This gives a little bit more detail of the location where the roadway is supposed to be.
Motion. Second. Mr. Matt. Second by Mr. Bud. Are there any questions, members of the committee? Any questions from members of the audience? All those in favor of moving 15-05 full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Moorhead. Get some good winter luck on it. Yes, sir.
I wonder if I could ask a question of Mr. Moorhead, not pertaining to anything I need to do.
Sure.
Okay? It's at your discretion.
Well, let's see how it goes.
I just had a simple question with the plumbing and gas prices lately. I wondered how that affected the cost of pavement, and if it would be that we'd be able to have an increased paving program in the upcoming year.
I have not seen any new projections for asphalt prices. I don't know. Haven't heard anything positive. I haven't heard anything negative, but I haven't seen any of the projections. ODOT typically has a inflation calculator on their website, and I honestly haven't looked at that recently. So as we get a little bit closer, I'll be looking to our local paving contractors to see what they anticipate, but I don't know yet.
Good question. We hope for the best.
I'm not expecting a change as that would equate to the same change that we're seeing in our gas prices. We might see a little bit of movement down, but I don't anticipate it'll be a
I wouldn't expect
significant
a
amount.
proportionate drop,
No.
but at least some
Yes,
would be awesome.
it'd be very nice.
Even a rebate for the closing for what they promised from last year would be great too.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. All right, we appreciate it very much. And that concludes the service committee meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I want to call the Personnel Committee meeting to order. Tonight we're here to discuss Ordinance 15-02, amending the position classification, pay range, and department authorization tables of the City of Newark, Division of Water and Wastewater by creating the classification of financial secretary and setting the compensation, therefore, and abolishing one secretary position. I need to mention council committee members present are Bub, Marmee, Foss, in for Guthrie, Roletta, and Floyd. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a change of a current position. This is not we're not adding an additional person. This is taking one position and changing it. We have a significant change in the job duties that this person has been doing, and they've been doing this job for a couple of years now. It's doing the collections process for the Division of Water and Wastewater. We've had some significant success in our collections process. I don't know, a little history, I guess. We've tried collections of various number of ways over the past 10 to 15 years. Using companies. Of course, companies charge us money for that kind of thing. Trying to use just some of our personnel on a part-time basis kind of thing. It's not been very successful until we started to do this. The person in this position has done an excellent job. We've reduced our bad debt from about $375,000 down to about $250,000. So that's been a significant savings to the city. As we all know, if you're in business, you can't do business unless you collect the money that's owed to you. And so that's what we're trying to do here is collect money that is owed to the city. This person is spending about 80 to 85% of the time on collections. The position was originally the secretary to the utility superintendent. That kind of work has changed over the years. I do a lot of my own clerical type stuff, I guess, writing letters and things like that. It's changed. The secretarial work has changed over the past year, number of years. This was an ideal fit for us to move this work onto her. It gives her a lot of work to do, and the reason I'm asking for a change in the pay range is this is a significant change in the work that she does. This is not just a couple added duties. This is 80% of her job being changed to another type of work. And it's a significant benefit to the city as well. We're collecting a lot more money on time, and we're collecting a lot of past due bills that we just in the past could not have collected. It's just a lot of time. Looking at going through the county records, trying to track down. Of course, a lot of our problem is we have a large number of rental properties in the city of Newark, and a lot of turnover of our accounts. So keeping a track of that is a significant help to us, and so that's why I'm requesting that we change this position. Still does a little bit of work, clerical type work, maybe about 10 to 15, maybe 20% of her time in doing that type of work, but really 80% of her time is spent doing this. This is a non-union position. This is in the non-union hourly bargaining, non-bargaining position with the city, so that's my request. So any questions that you may have.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Motion by Bub, second by Marmee. I don't. Anybody else have a question up here? I do. We've had several other times this year, or recently, where we've had somebody who has taken on considerable additional duties, and their pay has not changed. You feel this is a considerable difference?
My opinion is this is a significant change in the job duties and job responsibilities. They're taking on all the responsibility of tracking these people down, doing this work, and it's a bigger job than it was before. I'm also only asking to go from a 30 to a 32. That's not a significant jump.
Yeah, got it.
Most of our clerical staff in the city is now at pay range 31. This is just slightly above that, but one pay range where we're talking, 25-30 cents more an hour. It's not like thousands of dollars more. I think this is proper to pay people to work.
Oh, I do too. Now this comes out of water funds.
This is out of the water wastewater funds.
Okay. Anybody else up here have any questions? Anybody in the audience have any questions? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'd like to call this meeting of Newark City Council Safety Committee to order. Members present this evening are Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Rath, and we have Mrs. Hall sitting in for Mr. Guthrie, and myself. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. First of all, we only have one item on the agenda this evening, which is to listen to citizens' concerns about the city's dog ordinances. I would like to start by saying that there's no legislation on the agenda this evening, so no official decisions will be made tonight. I called this meeting because a number of individuals expressed concern in a recent city council meeting about these ordinances. So this is not a question and answer session with the committee or any official in particular. It's more of an opportunity for the committee to listen to concerns from residents this evening. I know some of you may have concerns regarding our animal control officer. These concerns need to be addressed in a process that is properly documented and fair to all sides. So I want to make sure all of your concerns are addressed promptly and properly. So I would like to remind everyone the City Council is not the venue for complaints about a city employee. If you're having an issue with the animal control officer, Safety Director Spurgeon has brought some complaint forms this evening. He's setting them in the back there. So please fill out those if you have an issue and turn them to the police department. I see no reason for this meeting to last longer than around an hour. That should give everyone ample time to come up and state their concerns and get them into the public record. I do want to make sure that everyone who wishes to have the opportunity to speak has the opportunity to do so. So please be considerate of others when you're giving your comments so everyone has time to speak if they'd like. If we find that it's getting late and not everyone in the room gets a chance to speak, I would encourage you to attend next week's full council meeting and bring up those concerns under citizens' comments. So I will now begin to invite members of the audience up to the lectern over here to, one at a time, give comments. When you reach the lectern, please give your name and address for the record. And please remember that this meeting is an opportunity to share your concerns and not a question and answer session. Mrs. Loomis?
Rhonda Loomis, 870 West Church Street. Thank you, Chairman Roletta. On December 15, 2014, a group of people came before full council with concerns about the city's codified ordinance in section 618, which lists pit bulls as vicious merely because of their breed. They also mentioned concerns about the animal control officer. During that meeting, it was mentioned that in at least one case, the animal control officer changed the label from vicious to exotic, which made the AKC Good Citizen test null and void. And I don't know what you found in your research on behalf of these citizens tonight, but if that were true, then that would be circumventing legislation, and I would hope that you would have a problem with that. My question was going to be, one of them was going to be how many have applied to have their pit removed from the vicious dog list, but Mr. Spurgeon answered that from an advocate inquiry 3. In December of 2013, the minutes reflect that was what we thought would happen, not many taking advantage of the compromise to remove their pit from the BSL. It's time-consuming and costly. Which brings us to the crux of the problem with having the BSL on Newark's books. It gives the ACO the ability to exert power over citizens that feel discriminated against merely because of their choice of pet. While they appreciate you allowing them time to vent their frustration, and while the actions of the animal control officer are the administration's responsibility, they are here to have you draft legislation for discussion with all council members, removing the BSL from the city's codified ordinance once and for all. This issue has come up in 2012, 2013, 2014, and now into 2015. It is another discretionary power that seems to create controversy, puts fear into law-abiding citizens with pits, as well as add to our local court's already heavy docket. It is time to come into line with the state of Ohio, who removed the label of vicious from pit bulls in 2012 with the passage of House Bill 14. Ohio lawmakers overturned the law that pit bulls as dangerous and vicious dogs. The change now requires evidence to prove pit bulls are actually vicious. Those in attendance are asking you, this committee, and ultimately full council to consider following the state and doing the same. Part of the conversation in late 2012 with that legislative group was not enough time had passed to see the ramifications of the state's decision. We are going on 3 years now. That's plenty of time. Are you willing to draft with the law director legislation to remove the BSL from the city's law books? Thank you, Mr. Levin.
Thank you, Mrs. Loomis. Who would like to go next?
That was wonderful.
Go Bucks. My name is Charles Moore, 120 North 24th Street. My argument is my opinion, which is unified with other members of this city and community. The current paradigm, which is conjoined with two major issues, the active BSL codified ordinance being borderline discrimination and extortion, and the current ACO personnel, either of which should be tolerated in this city. This city should not be accountable for stats, bias reports from other states or other parts of this country, which does not reflect the reality here in Newark. It is a direct smack in the face of freedom and liberties. The ACO actions representing a direct reflection of edicts with the apparent NSDAP type tactics, last known to be active in 1920 through 1945. And I often wonder on the road if Dorothy would have taken the other road with the red shoes instead of the road she took. But now I know. County dog personnel needing to wear a bulletproof vest. Why not rocket launchers, tanks? What's next? I think it's misappropriated spent funds. Okay? And also shows some real confidence that they have in the public that they're serving. Okay? In 2002,
The movie Minority Report, one being charged for a crime that was going to commit in the future but had not committed yet, based on what? Fortune telling. Okay, the facts, people, like I said, the facts and the stats don't lie. Kind of reminds me of George Orwell's 1984 novel. What was true yesterday is false today. And what was false yesterday is true today. Those who surrender freedom for war will not have, nor do they deserve either one. Ben Franklin. The man who chooses security over freedom deserves neither. Thomas Jefferson. The current mentality seems to be as such. Riddle me this, Batman, if you will. Your dog bites my leg, therefore I go to him and strangle his goldfish, and you go to jail for it. For 30 days, we put you in a cage. Now, were you in a cage because you're a threat to society, or were you in a cage for being non-compliant? I remember when kids here in Newark were putting, because they were truant, the parents were putting in jail. I think it was called accountability, based on actual events that had actually happened. And we teach our children not to be bullies, and that violence is never the answer. Yet we ourselves support first by coercion, and then by force, and the resolve to enforce all codified ordinances, and ultimately for what reason? Money control? Are dogs vicious or just being protective? And are guns killers or a form of security and protection? When I first started driving, when I was in my younger years, insurance companies were charging much more money if I was to drive a red car based on traffic accidents reports that cars were likely to get in accidents. However, there was no reports that out of the 100% of cars on the highway were 20% red or 80% red. That being said is, facts and stats are only relevant to who is collecting and recording them and advertising. Therefore, facts could be considered perception of one's repeating a lie or based on others that are not present as a witness. Anyone with a pulse can speak louder than someone else. Education could be considered as nothing more than indoctrination of one's predecessors or repeaters that are not present in the past. I yield. Thank you for my time. Go Bucks! Thank you.
Good evening. I'll talk fast so we can get to the game. My name is Jamie Ortman. I'm actually an attorney from Dayton, Ohio. I am here at the request of those owners of dogs that have been labeled, commonly known as a pit bull. I actually have had cases. I represent owners in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, which has a complete pit bull ban. However, the language in their statute or ordinance is almost completely identical to the language in the ordinance here in Newark, which belongs to a breed commonly known as pit bull. From there, your animal control officer pretty much gets to decide what is a pit bull. I've tried 2 cases actually upstairs in front of both of your judges, and the concerns that they had for Reynoldsburg ordinance play out here in Newark as well. Judge Higgins had a large concern with the due process violations that are going on still, actually, in Reynoldsburg.
That's right.
And the concern that I have is that I looked at Newark's ordinance, and it does not provide for a due process item. What I'm talking about is an animal control officer knocking on a door regarding an anonymous complaint, usually, about a pit bull. He tells them they have, I believe, three days to get rid of their dog, and then comes back and cites them with a criminal citation, which in Newark can actually lead to a felony, which surprises me completely. However, what he's not telling them is that they have the right to a hearing, and they have the right to a hearing on whether or not their dog is a pit bull, because under your ordinance, pit bulls, if it's identified as a pit bull, it's automatically vicious. There's an escape route with that. You can take the behavior classes, you can pass the canine citizenship. However, the issue becomes, what is a pit bull in the first place? Science we can present to you. Now that the council has been asked to review this issue, I'm more than happy to provide you with all of the documentation regarding visual identification of dog breeds. To be clear, pit bull isn't a breed itself. There is the American Pit Bull Terrier, and that's the only dog that can actually be called a pit bull if it's purebred. So there's a lot of confusion about breeds of dogs. So, obviously, two issues. One, identifying the dog to begin with. We've had a lot of misidentification in Reynoldsburg, a lot of cane corsos, a lot of boxers being identified as pit bulls. And in a situation where an animal control officer might seize this dog, that causes a great deal of concern. Again, unfortunately, dogs are considered property. In this case, it's fortunate because if the government comes and takes your property, you have the right to a hearing. You can appeal if there's a decision made by the city council that says, yeah, we think that is a pit bull, you have the right to appeal that before anything can happen to your dog. So that's a big concern, obviously, that needs to be addressed, at least within your ordinance. Secondly, the ordinance also allows for the prima facie, which, if you read your ordinance, it says, breed commonly known as pit bull is vicious, and ownership of a pit bull is prima facie evidence that the dog is vicious. What that means is that you can, the person who cited, come into the hearing and present evidence to show that their dog is not vicious, even if it is a pit bull. And we won that issue upstairs. Judge Higgins, there's case law out there from another district stating that they believe prima facie means all you have to do is bring in enough evidence to rebut the prima facie evidence of the state, simply saying it's a pit bull. We did that, we won. The person in Reynoldsburg gets to keep their dog, even though there's a pit bull ban in Reynoldsburg. So what you're looking at is these people need to know they have the right to fight this, and that the city council needs to understand that there's going to be a lot of hearings. People are going to start asking for hearings on whether or not their dog is a pit bull. So that's one of the other reasons that it really needs to be looked at, the ordinance does. The second issue I had with the ordinance when I reviewed it was that it's ridiculously confusing. The issue that the very first lady, I can't remember her name, brought up about the animal control officer changing the citation. If you look at your ordinance, pit bulls are listed in two separate sections. They're listed under the vicious dog definition and then the vicious dog requirements that Newark has. And then they're listed under exotic animals, restricted animals, and they're the only animal that's restricted. There's a list of other animals that are not allowed, but they're the pretty much only animal that is considered restricted. That's confusing to people who are trying to follow your laws. Because what you're saying is they're banned, but they're not banned. So, at least that needs to be looked at as well in order for, I believe, your ordinance to be considered constitutional at this point. The other thing I would bring up is specifically, I should mention, that Judge Stansbury ruled in our favor in the Reynoldsburg case because their ordinance was also very convoluted. It makes no sense if you look at the definitions of dangerous and vicious and all sorts of things. And he had a big problem with that. He said, how can people follow the law if I can't even understand it? So there was that issue as well. I would say that I am here on behalf of these people, and so I would ask as well. I think I'm a legal consultant to a few people. So I would ask as well that the council, specifically the safety committee, really take a look at this ordinance and decide whether or not you need it based upon your police reports. How many dog bites are there? How many people are being hurt? Is this ordinance being enforced equal protection? Are the dogs that bite that are not pit bulls, are they having to follow this ordinance? Are they being protected for not having their dog with a muzzle? Even if it's a Yorkie or a Chihuahua. Apparently I've been bit by one, it hurts. So, does that dog have to be muzzled? Do they even make muzzles that small? So that's my concern, and that's how I have become involved in this. And I did just want to bring that to your attention, specifically the due process, and to let the public know that you have the right to request this hearing. It's required under the law, under the Constitution of Ohio, under the Constitution of the United States, and people should start asking for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
All
am Dwight Harler. I live on 3700 Headley's Mill Road in Pataskla. And I'm involved in this because of a little dog that is an American Bulldog named Charlie. So I'm on Facebook, and he supposedly is a vicious dog, and he was going to be picked up by Toby Wills and put down on Monday. So I thought, I'm not going to leave this little dog die. So I came down with a cage and picked him up from the owner. Nothing vicious about this dog at all. We had him in a cage, he rode in the front seat, he was licking Laura's face. He's a great dog. We had somebody that was going to adopt him from me. I grabbed his back legs, walked him around like a wheelbarrow, and he just looked at me like, why are you doing this to me? There's nothing mean about this dog. I take him out on these cold mornings, and his feet are on the ground, and he starts picking his feet up, and he rolls over and whines and like carry me back from the house. So I'm glad I saved the little guy's life, and I know there are people that go to jail with ruining a dog. I had a zero-turn radius mower stolen out of Pataskla a few years back. This guy had 3 offenses for theft. He was tested positive while he was on probation for crack cocaine, and the judge here in Newark gave this guy 10 months probation. I really think it's wrong that people with dogs go to jail. It's a shame, it really is. I mean, that's all I have to say, and I'm glad I saved this little guy. I love him.
Anyone else like to give their comments?
This will be short and sweet. It's so short and sweet, I won't even open the paper wide. My name's Terry Lyle, 294 Stair Road here in Newark. And I'm going to get on my soapbox here just a little bit. May not make a few people happy, but BSL laws are racist. Yes, racist. They single out one race, breed, and profile them without regard to anything other than race, breed. The same criteria that this country lived under for over 200 years. If someone, again breed, isn't a certain color, then they are likely to do bad things. They must be stopped. So that color, type of dog, is bad and should be eliminated. The BSL has created the Ku Klux Klan of the canine world, promoting hate and mistrust. We are a non-pit bull haters and animal lovers in general must raise and be their voice because they can't speak for themselves. We need to be the Rosa Parks, the Selma, Alabama marchers of the canine world, the million-man marchers. It should be the deed and not the breed. I mean, it's fine to have animal control laws, it's fine to have vicious dog laws, but don't make it a blanket to cover every animal. Just pick on the ones that, shall we say, commit the crime? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments?
Hello, good evening. Stephen Smith, 314 North 10th Street. Just listening to everybody here, I also am a pit bull owner, and got caught into this mess a while back. For me, it's been about 4 or 5 years now I've been dealing with this situation. I did a lot of study on a lot of homework on the situation. The state had actually already picked this whole thing up. It went to the Supreme Court. There's a video they had online of that whole decision, that argument, the evidence that was presented. And this is why the state moved to change the legislation, that they agreed that the BSL legislation wasn't working and that it had to be more specific in individual cases. So definitely, they seen that it was an egregious law that it needed to be changed. But even more than that, I have to say, what's even more egregious with the Newark's ordinance is not only is the law, as the young lady just talked about a little bit, ambiguous, miscued, and the way it's enforced. The animal control officer, I have to disagree with you where you said that this may not be a venue to even voice that or bring that up right now. As you know, we elect the officials, the mayor in turn elects that animal control officer. So I just wanted to share with you my story, my situation, and I tried to make it short as I could, but it's even more extensive. It was on March 4th of 2013. My 7-year-old son had brought it to my attention that the dog was no longer in the backyard, which was an enclosed, secure, fenced-in area. On March 5th, after searching for the dog the next day extensively, we checked with the animal control shelter to see if the dog was there, and it was confirmed that the dog was there, and indeed at the animal shelter. When I asked the animal control officer what was needed to retrieve my dog from the impound, I was told that I had to have the current dog registration, which was $30. I also had to pay $16 for board and shelter, which was a total of $46. And I also needed a copy of my driver's license, which I provided. I was given a leash for the dog, for my dog, and my 7-year-old and my 11-year-old daughter left and walked out of the animal control shelter. On April 26th, I received a phone call on my cell phone saying that the dog was at the Newark police station. And if I wanted to get the dog back, I would need to come down to the police station and pick the dog up. I said that the dog was in a gated fence. Last I seen my dog was in the backyard. The person that I was speaking to said that, no, your dog's not in the backyard, and informed me that he went in the backyard and seized the dog. I proceeded to the police station to pick the dog up, and when I arrived at the police station, I was confronted by the dog warden, who appeared irate, unhelpful, and clearly disturbed, and demanded that I sign documents stating that I had a dangerous and vicious dog. When I explained that the dog had not resided with me fully and frequently stays with a relative and comes mostly when I have my kids, which is every other week, he said it didn't matter, that I had to sign the registered dog, and it didn't matter whether I signed it anyway because I was going to jail. At which time he said, turn around, there's somebody here for you. Where it was a Newark police officer who handcuffed me and escorted me to the county jail, where I was charged, fingerprinted, and booked for the violation of the Newark Codified Ordinance 618.15B and 618.15D. My mugshot was taken, I was in the tabloid, slandered, my bond was $2,000, I had to pay $254 to get released. Now, I wanted to pause here because the animal control officer is considered a peace officer. That's what he calls himself. If you look at the mission statement of the Newark Police Department, it speaks very much about they operate with integrity. There's no integrity about our animal control officer. Secondly, let me keep going. On the following day, April 26 a.m., later that afternoon, on May 22nd, this is after this, all this has happened. On May 22nd, the dog warden arrived at my residence and said that I had to have the dog in compliance and I needed to come down and get this permit for the dog. I informed them that I had to go to court. I got a court date now on the 28th for this matter to be heard in front of the judge. And he stated that I had until 3:30 that afternoon to go down there and get the permit. On May 23rd, I received 2 more identical charges of violation of 618.15 and 618.5D. In other words, he charged me again by certified men. At this point, I felt that the dog warden was clearly harassing me and exhibiting clear abuse of power, which I'm explaining to him. I didn't agree with the ordinance, You've already arrested me. You've sent me to jail. I bonded out. A court date has been set. Let's wait till we go to court to handle it, just to see how the judge decides. He didn't want to wait to do that. He went on to file charges again. So now I had 4 of those charges looking at me before I go to court. So I go to court. Oh no, he said, let me go back. He says, because I was instructed to go to the Newark Police Department and ask for the dog warden supervisor because I was upset. I went to the clerk of court's office complaining about the situation. They said, go to a supervisor. I spoke with the supervisor of the dog warden at that time. He informed them that upon researching that I wish to apply for the appeals process that the lady was just spoken of, which I was never informed about the appeals process. And it was a violation of my due process. The dog warden said he didn't have to make notice of the appeals process. He quoted a Supreme Court case and said that the city ordinance was indeed needed to be changed and that the supervisor's basic position was to just comply with the dog warden and he'll leave you alone. and I'm just going to go through this. I go back to the police department. In short, I go to court with Higgins. I plead not guilty. I argue the case. I win. Higgins agrees with me and finds me not guilty. The charges was then again, or the 2 other charges was filed in a separate case, in a separate court, causing me to take time off work to go back to refight the same trial that I just got found not guilty of. Another ambiguous thing, if he's saying that the dog is vicious and dangerous, why would he permit me to come back to the animal shelter to pick the dog up? In essence, you aided and abetted me in a violation of a crime. If you're saying my dog is vicious and dangerous, why would he release the dog back into my care without a permit? It doesn't make sense. If I had a gun that was on the seat of a car, someone seen it, called the police take the gun, so we don't know whose it is. Come down, if you got a permit for it, we'll give you your gun back. If I go out there and say it's my gun, but I have no permit for it, they're not giving me no gun. So the system is broken. It needs to be fixed, especially with the animal control officer. A lawsuit is coming. It's going to be more than one lawsuit on the city. It's going to cost us more and more burden, which I don't think we can understand. I think the people agree to that. Thank you.
I know several people have concerns about the animal control officer. That is truly not something council can deal with. I know you think we need to hear your stories, but we do not hire and fire. We do not listen to those kinds of things. All we do is create positions and set pay ranges and benefits and that kind of thing for city employees. We do not do the hiring and firing. That has to go through a complaint process. That basically, there's a form that you fill out, and it's taken to the police department. The police investigate it. They take it to the safety director, and the safety director handles that. So I know some of you have concerns, and I know lots of you probably have stories, but that's the way that needs to be dealt with. I'm sure we could sit here all night and listen to a number of stories, but that is not what the purpose of this meeting is. This meeting is to hear, concerns about the current law, which several of us have heard numerous times over the last few years, obviously. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
Who else would like to give comments?
The knockdown story. I think, my name's Tammy Mitchell, and I live 26 Channel. I think the main reason that most of us are out here is to get this law changed, right? Yeah. We need to know how to go about it because we didn't take school for law. So I think that's the problem. None of us really know what to do to how to go about it. So you guys could just let us know what we're supposed to do so we can change the law, because I just think it's ridiculous. People spending time in jail like my son did for 10 days for nothing. And get a first degree misdemeanor on my record for nothing. So I think that's, and everybody that got up and spoke, It was great. That's what we...
Tell it.
Oh, they've heard my story.
I haven't.
They've heard my story. But I think what we're needing to know is how to change the law. We don't know how to do it. At least
I would suggest one possible option. You may try to schedule a meeting with the law director. No, sure.
Yes. Could I maybe address that? That's an excellent question. It's an excellent point. And while we appreciate all the discussion and comments here tonight, obviously nothing's going to be accomplished tonight because all we do is vote on legislation and there is no legislation before us to vote on. If you want to change the law, probably the best option for you to do would be to find, first off, any legislation has to have a sponsor from council. So you need to find somebody on council that's willing to sponsor your legislation. Then you need to have that legislation drafted. A council member can help you with that. They'll do that with the assistance of the law director. Obviously, some of you have legal representation here. If that person wants to get involved in that legislation, in the draft of that legislation, that's fine. If I'm involved in that, I'm not paying her. So if she needs to be paid, somebody else is doing that. I'm a part-time councilman and I don't make enough to pay her. And then at that point in time, that legislation is presented to the president of City Council, who's Don Ellington, standing in the back. And then Don Ellington assigns that to a committee. The legislation comes to committee. It's then discussed, debated, and if there is a motion to accept, to move it on to full council in a second, that it gets voted upon. If the majority members of that committee vote to send that on to full council, then it goes to full council. It goes for 2 readings. The first reading is just simply a reading. The second reading is a reading and a vote. Unless there's an emergency clause or a waiving of the second reading, which is a whole other topic. But that's basically the process that you have to go through to have the law changed.
What's the time frame of that? From start to finish?
We have committee meetings every 2 weeks. So if, and a deadline to submit something to be on in a committee is the Thursday prior to the committee. Once the committee is held and it's passed in committee to go on to full council, that would be, for example, if it was voted on tonight, then it goes to council, the next council meeting, which would be next Monday. Then it would be, for the first reading, then it would be held over to the next council meeting, which is typically 2 weeks later, although I think this is a 5-week month, so it might be 3 weeks later, but it goes to the next council meeting, which is typically 2 weeks later. At that point in time, it's voted on, and if it's passed, then it goes to the mayor's office for a signature, and the law director can give you much more details about what happens there, because at that point in time, I don't know. Then the mayor signs it, has 30 days to sign it, is that correct?
7 days to sign it, but it takes effect 30 days after the signature is applied.
Okay, so the mayor signs it with, or not signs it within 7 days, and then it takes 30 days for it to go into effect. And I guess I'll defer to the law director. Is there anything that I said that wasn't accurate?
Can I ask for clarification then, possibly? Our understanding was that we're not actually asking to introduce new legislation. What we're asking for is the council to review the current legislation and then make decisions on whether or not they would like to rewrite it. So what we would do is we would ask one of the council or the committee members to sponsor, this look at the current law. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
It's not quite how it works. Essentially, we can have as many meetings of safety committee as the council wishes to have, as Mr. Roulette wishes to have to discuss the matter. And there can be expressions from the audience or from council as to their opinions as to the ordinance, and we can do that every other Monday night if we want to until we all retire or give up. that doesn't get the ball rolling. What has to get the ball rolling is that your spokesperson, whoever that may be, needs to find the ear of a council person who agrees with your position. That council person will then meet with you. It's not appropriate for me to sit down with any of you individually to draft legislation. That's not what I get paid to do. That's not how the process works. But I do work for these 10 people. And if one of them feels that your position is worthy of consideration and feels that they have support on council that would make the effort worthwhile, then we would meet and we would have to draft a piece of legislation. That's the easy part. Okay? Drafting the piece of legislation is simple, and it's simply to change the existing ordinance to remove the breed-specific language and all of those various provisions that come along with it. I think, and I don't know that any of us are terribly concerned about the fact that the city of Newark ought to take enhanced precautions to protect our citizens against vicious dogs. I think the concern here is simply the per se language with regard to a particular type of dog being deemed vicious. That's the easy part. Once you find a city council person who's willing to sponsor and work with me in the drafting of that legislation, they schedule an appointment, we get the piece of legislation drafted, presented to the president, he submits it to council, and the debate begins. That's when the debate begins between the 10 members of council who vote and make a decision on that. Until then, we're just talking. I guess that's about as plain English as I can put it.
That's what we do. So it would make your life easier if we had it drafted and brought it to you.
No, absolutely not. That's what I get paid to do. I'd rather draft it myself. Quite honestly, I'd rather draft it myself, and I don't find the drafting of it to be the difficult part. The politics of it is the difficult part, but that's on you, not on me.
So what if Ohio State wins tonight? Everybody in here helps sponsor this bill. Well, I'll call you more.
Anyone else like to give their comments?
Sean Kern, 58 North Lake Drive, Newark, Ohio. First of all, I'd like to apologize for the way I'm dressed. I had no intention whatsoever to speak tonight. However, no offense to the pit bull people whatsoever, but there's more breeds on that list than pits. The gentleman from Pataskala, thank you for taking the ABN. I'm an AB owner, American Bulldog owner. We have the same prejudice as pit bulls. In fact, I can't tell you how many times my gas company has labeled my house a pit bull house. Not that they're scared of my dogs. They're not. My gas man comes every month, fills it up, dogs in the yard with him. You don't care. But I'm labeled a pit bull house. I mean, what's that say? I mean, right there, you're already pigeonholing not just my dog, me. Again, no offense to pit bull people. There's more breeds on there. I know we got Rottie owners here. Beautiful dogs, love them. They're also on that list. I just wanted to make it clear that it's not just pit bulls. That we're running a whole list down. And every year, I've actually belonged to the national chapter of Blame the Deed, Not the Breed, which the gentleman brought up. That's a real organization. And there's been states like Texas who have taken big steps towards that. You would not believe how far behind Newark is. From Texas. No offense to you Longhorn people, but they're kind of backwards. Alright? This is something that needs to be addressed. And I'm going to touch on the animal control officer guy real quick. I understand that you don't do the hiring and the firing. I think the concern here is customer service. That's what it is. It's not that this lady got, fined, or this gentleman over here got fined. It's the fact that his dignity was taken away for starters. Hey, come on in. We want to talk to you for a second. Slam against the wall, got cuffed on it. It's customer service. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of the officers here in town. Nice guys. Because they follow that. Why can't the animal control do the same? Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments?
My name is Debbie Anthony. I live at 1660 King Road, Apartment A. And I'm 40 years old. I've never been in trouble with the law. Now I have on my record 5 citations that are bogus, just because I went to the dog pound and saved a dog's life. And the ACO, I know you don't want to hear it, but he's awful. He basically harassed me, intimidated me, was condescending. He spoke to me so poorly that somebody that was in the opposite room felt the need to come and defend me. It was awful. I think that the VSL needs to be abolished. This dog was gentle. It had never bit anybody. That's why I went to say this. I told Toby that within 48 hours the dog was going to be adopted. He still issued 5 citations against me, facing up to thousands of dollars in fines, jail time. I'm a little nervous. And I went through hell the last couple months because of it. And I think that...
Relax, we're just like you, just people knocking a lot of doors.
That's the way confidence in this time. People that are innocent like me, that never committed a crime in their life, are being treated like criminals. And it has to stop, I think.
I just want to mention, there are complaint forms out there on the bench by the front door. If somebody wants to take one and fill it out, that's what they're there for. Yeah, there is a process that has to go through.
I'm Savannah Boley. I've been fighting the BSL here for 2 years.
What's your address, please? I'm sorry.
Sorry, 214 Round Avenue.
Thank you.
I helped with Jeff Rath and Rhonda here and several others to change some of the language so that responsible pit bull owners who actually do care about their dogs can have some freedoms. Unfortunately, it wasn't changed how I wanted it to. But I feel like the people who are out there trying to win the good fight for these dogs and speak for them really have to step up. There is a lot of people, unfortunately, out here who could care less about these dogs, who are making our dogs look bad. And the fact that we are not standing up and not helping each other is the issue. It's not about pit bulls. It's not about Rottweilers, German Shepherds. It's about all dogs are the same. Any dog can hurt anyone. It's about how you're raising your dog, how you are socializing your pet. It's not about the dogs, it's about the people. What are we doing to make sure that we are raising our dogs to be good canine citizens, to be effective in the community? That's what it's about. We need to make sure that we're letting everyone else know who is a pit bull owner to be here. I've been fighting for 2 years and I've not had the community support. People who are trying to save these animals and are trying to do the good thing, you need to be here. You need to voice your opinion. That's the only way we're going to get this changed.
Anyone else?
Just quickly, I'd like to speak. Jordana Acor, 10504 Pleasant Valley Road. It's Frazeysburg, but I'm still in King County. I want to touch on something that I think they kind of all went around, and that is the fact that the VSL states that these dogs are inherently vicious. In September, I was involved in the rescue with a couple other people here of a pit bull. He had been fought and mistreated. When I picked him up, he had punctured wounds, his ear was torn, he was still bleeding. I took him home that very night and gave him a bath. There was absolutely no aggression. I took him into a home with an older male mastiffs and an older female mastiff. He ran to them and licked them. There was absolutely no fight in him. I truly believe he was either a bait dog or they were trying to teach him to fight, but it's not in him to fight. He loves everyone. I took him to the vet the next day. He loved everyone at the vet. They treated him. I've been treating him. He had a severe case of mange.
3 days later, he met several people here. He licked them to death. It's not, that dog is not mean. He's not vicious. He's met children, cats. So, yes, there are vicious dogs. You need to address vicious dogs, not a vicious breed, because not every breed is vicious. And I am a responsible dog owner, and I will be taking him to class, and I will probably get a CGC. I understand not everyone can afford that because it is rather expensive. I previously had 2 Mastiffs with the CGC and one with the therapy dog title, so I'm sure that we can probably accomplish it, even though he's a little rambunctious yet. But I just wanted anyone here who has a preconceived notion about pit bulls, I would invite you to meet him, because he actually has no aggression at all, even though a person tried to teach him that. And under your law, that person who lives in Newark is now not guilty, but I am, because I own him, even though he's microchipped, neutered, and friendly with everyone. So I just want you to keep in mind that they are not inherently vicious. People make them vicious. Regardless, I've had Rottweilers. Again, I've had Mastiffs for years. It's how people treat them that cause it. It's not the breed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. St. Clair, could I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
And then you're next, because I know you're dying to get up here.
Fine.
I'm just trying to educate myself. You made a statement early on in your statement that you had dogs that were altered and unaltered.
Yes.
Can you define what altered and unaltered?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think I know.
I have 2 male, at the time I brought him in, my dogs were older. I had 2 male Mastiffs that were not neutered. They were still intact. Which they tend to say, some people will say makes them more likely to fight. It doesn't. But so he came into a home. He was not neutered, with 2 male Mastiffs who were not neutered, and there was no issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Lori Schwartzkopf. I live at 6450 Red Coach Lane, Reynoldsburg, Ohio. I actually live in Columbus, but I have a Reynoldsburg address. I started working with the city of Reynoldsburg in December of 2012 to remove the ban. So I know what you're talking about community support. It's very difficult to get support. One of the reasons we cannot get support in Reynoldsburg is there's a complete ban there and people are scared.
Right.
People are very scared. Now we don't have an ACO there, but we do have police officers that are enforcing this law. And they do go after people that come and speak out. They do look in the paper. They do watch those news videos. They do come after you. We've seen it. It's happened in Reynoldsburg. So there is a very real fear that people are going to lose their dogs, and so they're not going to want to come up here and necessarily be seen. They're afraid you're going to run their plates in the parking lot. I mean, we've had people say that. Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell you a ton of stories in the last 2 years working with the city of Reynoldsburg. But here's one thing, when we first started and when we first came up to the podium to talk to our council members about this process, we did it the way we were asked to do it. We didn't understand the process. It's a very complicated process to people that aren't involved in politics, to people that aren't on city council. And if you just went through it, and I know it very well now because I've been working with the city for 2 years, but to these folks who probably aren't familiar with this process, I guarantee you they didn't get any of it. They're like, what are we supposed to do? So what I would ask of you for these people that I'm sure you're going to see quite a bit of is to respect the fact that they aren't where you are with this political situation. I agree with your law director and people here who have said it's not about the pit bulls. It's not about the pit bulls. It's about fear, and it's about your trying to control a lot of your residents have a serious fear of these dogs. I had fear of these dogs when I first started working with the city because I don't have one. And I've been exposed to all the same media stories that all of you have. And so I had fear, but I knew that this BSL was nothing but a form of a way for council members like you to help allay the fears of your citizens. Don't worry, we've got a ban on these dogs. You're not going to get hurt by any of these dogs. It's ridiculous. There are hundreds of pit bulls in Reynoldsburg. The city doesn't enforce the law. At least they didn't until we asked them to repeal the law, and then they did start to enforce it. But after having 2 cases here in Licking County, having 2 other cases in Licking County dismissed, having, I believe, close to 6 cases in Franklin County dismissed by the city of Reynoldsburg, primarily for lack of evidence. They have again stopped enforcing the law. These laws are very difficult to enforce, but again, because your residents are unaware of their rights to a hearing on whether their dog is a pit bull or not, which is very difficult to prove, as Tammy has said, by visual breed identification. I don't care if he's a trained ACO or not. It's very difficult to do. So I think that's all going to change now, because these folks know that they have a right to a hearing, that they have a right to protect their property and to keep their dogs. And so I hope that you will understand and respect and help them in this process, so that they're not out there floundering around like I did for close to a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment?
My name's Darla Scabidi. I live at 12901 Newark, so not actually a Newark resident. I also don't own a pit bull, so I don't even have a dog in this fight. I'm here just to support my friends who have all gone through something here, as I'm sure you can tell, that these people have been going through something. And so what I want to say to all of you, especially in light of what they brought to our attention about none of us knowing where to start, how this process works, what our rights were. I just want to say to all of you, I know you had to overcome a lot of fears to get up here and do what you just did, because there's been a lot of fear mongering going on. I'm really proud of all of you for what you've done, bringing this to their attention. And what I would like to say to each and every one of you after listening to their stories is that I hope you recognize that there is a lot of fear, and that it seems to have been some bullying with this law. And I hope that one of you finds it in your heart to do the right thing and get rid of this legislation that doesn't seem to be helping anybody but causing problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment?
I'll comment on what you just said. I appreciate what you said. Unfortunately, one of us with this in our heart to make the change doesn't work. It sits. There's 10 council members up here and 6 have to agree. So it's not just one,
Well,
unfortunately.
I thought he said that we needed to get the ear of one of the council members.
Just start the chart.
Just to get started, we need one person. Right?
Right, and then 6 of them have to vote on in the end.
Got to start somewhere. I have somebody please bring them.
I would just like to change the wording from ask to challenge. Instead of asking for someone to step forward on the council and help get this started, I challenge someone to do that.
Do we have any other comments?
My name's Amanda. I'd rather not give my last name because, like everybody else is saying, he's horrible. And you're afraid of the repercussions. But I have my parents.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Are you able to please give your name and address for the record? It's for our council.
No, because I don't want him to harass my parents, not even my dog. My parents have an American Bulldog. They got it, he's 5 years old now. My baby brother, who's now 10, has had cancer since he was 2. So they have the dog, and at times they're gone for a couple weeks at a time, and he'll come stay with me. So I'm there with the dog, and he comes to my house and says I have a pit bull. I'm like, I don't. So I go get his papers off my parents' refrigerator and show him his papers. And I'm like, he's an American Bulldog. He's not a pit bull. He gets the papers back and says the same thing. And I'm like, no, it's a completely different breed of dog. And I try to again show him the papers and his bloodline and showing that he has no pit in him whatsoever. He took the dog. So I have to call my mom, who's at the hospital with my baby brother, to come home because this guy has come to take the dog. It's just been a fight since then. So we comply. We don't want to fight with him. We don't want our dog taken, so we do it. However, sometimes since the dog does stay with me, he makes us have 2 dogs licensed, 2 vicious dog permits, and 2 of everything, even though the dog is not licensed to me and is rarely at my address. And like I said, people are afraid of him because he makes your life hell. He'll come, he'll harass you, he's terrible to you, he's like disrespect is nothing, like compared to what this dude does to her. And he'll take her dog. I mean, he loves her dogs. You don't, no deal with it.
I understand.
But something has to change. We can't live in fear.
I would really encourage you to write a formal complaint form because that's really the only way things like that can be addressed.
Yeah, right. I've been told that nothing will happen.
Sir, could you please come to the lectern, your name and address for the record?
My name's Shane. I'm at 133 Van Boer Street. My dog's already been lifted from the vicious thing. And I've been told that nothing's going to happen. You know, I've filled out the papers and nothing's going to happen. I've already been told that. So I don't, you say fill these papers out, but nothing's going to be happening. I've been told that by him. He said he would look into it, Sergeant McKee, and what are we going to do? Fill these papers out if nothing's going to happen? I mean, I'm frustrated because he does harass.
Yeah, there's enough people do it.
I'm confused as to what he's talking about. Fill out the papers and what's...
The papers for the sergeant or whatever to report him, yeah, the complaint papers. And I did that, and I had a meeting with his boss. I said nothing. I mean, he just took it down on his phone, and that was it.
I'm Nikki Erger. I live on Jones Road. I went with the people that had a complaint, and they were supposed to do the follow-up with the Sergeant McKee. And Toby was there waiting for them and looking at them while they were sitting in their chairs. I mean, it's bad. That's all I have to say. I mean, that's what happens when you file a complaint.
Hearing your dog that was teared up.
Does anyone else have comments about the city's dog ordinances in particular? Would like to speak? We're getting near the end on time here, so I'd like to give any other resident that has a comment about the ordinance.
My name is Rod Acorn, I'm at 476 Alston Avenue. I guess I have a question, if I'm allowed to. Is this the council that passed the good citizens test? Well, you guys all agreed on your dog passes the good citizen test, then he's exempt from the...
I was not on council at the time, and Mrs. Hall was...
Does anybody here have a copy of that law, or could they read the wording of this?
No, we don't have that.
We won't have copies of that present in front of us. I was involved in it.
Yes, basically it says that if you have a vicious dog of any sort, whether it's by breed or by behavior, if your dog submits to an AKC-approved training course and obtains the AKC Canine Good Citizen Award, or certificate, I forget the word they use, and that's renewed every year, you're exempt from those enhanced requirements with regard to the chain, the muzzle, the insurance, the microchip. That's basically what the Canine Good Citizen provision says.
Okay.
It's actually listed under your pit bull section of
it's in the vicious dog, exempting you from the section.
Actually, it's written under a dog that belongs to a breed commonly known as pit bull, which would make it seem that it only applies to pit bulls.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd also like to know, why is it AKC?
My question, I guess my statement or my question was, then I have to have the AKC paper stating that my dog passed all 10 steps of the class and graduated the class. And then we're good. We're exempt from those, the muzzle, all that.
You need to follow up each year.
Yeah. I have to follow up each year, but a year hasn't gone by yet. So as long as I present that document from the AKC.
I don't know what document. I'd have to
The
see
certificate.
The certificate you said I needed.
And you need to take it through a professional training program.
And that
He did. He did.
That's not in the, that's what I'm saying. Is that in your law that says that I have to have a note from the teacher also?
Yeah.
I'm not really going to debate that. I don't know what a note from the teacher.
Well, we were all told that.
A copy of the ordinance itself.
When I go to turn in my certificate, which I have right here, they also request a note from the teacher.
Yeah.
Did you guys say that I needed a note from the teacher in the beginning? Because that's my question. In the written law, they're throwing up blocks at the end. We jump through the hoops, and we get through the hoops that they ask us to jump through, and they throw up a tripping block right there at the end.
That's right, that's what he did.
Yeah, why are you yelling?
I'm just yelling if anybody will hear me. Was that, does anybody know that was in your original?
No, it's not.
That was not. Then why should I have to present that to them?
I can't answer that question.
Who can? No answers.
Again, I would...
Does anybody know who can give me an answer?
See, that was my problem, the day my son...
Sorry, one at a time, please. If they would like to speak, please come back to the lectern. We'll give the name and address for who's talking on the minutes.
You understand that they're putting up other stipulations at the end of this. When we jump through the hoops and do exactly what they told us to do, we give them the paperwork and they, oh, wait a minute, there's one more thing you need. That wasn't in the original.
Are you saying, when you say they?
I'm saying the dog warden, whoever had to turn these papers into his boss or Toby or anybody, they say, you know, you also need this other thing
Right.
after the fact.
Okay. I don't recall that at all, but...
I didn't believe it was there. I didn't read it. I read the law and it wasn't in there.
Mr. Chairman, Rhonda Lewis, 870 West Church Street. To close this out, I think what you've heard, what I started with was, it would appear that the law that we passed in December 2013 is being circumvented in different ways. So if he turns in his paperwork for AKC, then they deem it exotic. So my understanding is that while, as the advocate put it, in 2013 when we tried to come up with a compromise for these people that were good dog owners that cared about their dogs, that what they are feeling are repercussions in somebody circumventing the legislation that we passed. So what we or they are asking for is someone to sponsor legislation to rid the codified ordinance of BSL. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more person to give comments if they'd be interested. All right, well, I'd like to thank all of you for coming tonight and giving us your concerns. We appreciate the opportunity to be further educated on the issue from your experiences. And we will look over the city's ordinances, and if anyone has a legislative proposal and it is referred to this committee, then this committee will meet again on the issue. So call the meeting, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, is there any business here that would be interested in helping me out?